Welcome to another episode of Beyond Four Walls, the podcast where I delve deep into the ever-evolving world of the property industry. I'm your host, Jodie Fraser, and today I am thrilled to have an insightful guest who brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to our discussion. Joining me is Sarah Hewson, a distinguished professional in the property industry. And Sarah's journey through the multifaceted landscape of real estate has been nothing short of inspiring. From her extensive experience to her innovative approaches in the field, Sarah is here to share her insights on the trends, challenges, and future of the property industry. So welcome, Sarah. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm delighted to be able to chat to you, and I think you've been a bit overkind in your introduction there.
Oh, not at all, not at all. But thank you for agreeing to join me. Can you tell me a little bit about your journey into the property industry and what inspired you to pursue this path?
Yeah, so in 2010, my husband and I bought our first new build property on a housing development. And I remember clearly the day that it was actually the site foreman explained to me that there was this arrangement where there was a limited company set up and we would be shareholders in it. And all the shareholders would get together and decide how to manage the development. So I thought that was fantastic. I imagined us all getting together and agreeing stuff in a very, civilized, lovely way. And um, needless to say, it didn't work out exactly like that. Unfortunately, that developer went bust a couple of years later. Like all of us were completely green to managing agents and how it should work. The initial reaction to the managing agent that was appointed by the bankruptcy guy was, oh, we don't like this. This hasn't been done right. We got together, had a meeting, and I was nominated to sort it out. So long story short, myself and two of the neighbours got appointed as directors. Now the two neighbours, one was an auditor and the other one was a health and safety expert. So I learned so much from them. And between us, we just learned everything we could learn about management companies and managing agents. And then we worked with the existing managing agent for a while, but then we changed to a different managing agent. So through all of that process, and that's really where I learned all about it. And then a number of years later, I was sort of at a bit of a crossroads thinking, I want to do something. I want to start a business. I want to do something for myself. And my background was administration. So I recognized that block management was 90% admin, and that's what I was good at. So I thought, okay, well, I think with what I know, that's what I should do. So that's how I started. I incorporated the company in 2016. It's called Ballymena Block Management, and I got my first client in 2017, and basically just built it very slowly, client by client. I mean, for the first 2 years, I didn't take any pay.
You're getting there.
Yeah, I get paid now. It's great.
Yeah. Well, you should get paid for all the hard work that we have to do for our clients.
Yeah.
So, but what do you think what do you see as the biggest challenges facing the industry today?
There's the challenges that there has always been, because I mean, I did start off very idealistic, thinking I would, do so much better than everybody else. And I quickly realized, oh my goodness, you need to know so much about so many things. I also assumed that if I went to an accountant or a solicitor, they would supply me with the missing knowledge, but I actually didn't find that. I mean, I'm in Northern Ireland. It's a really small place. So for a start, I couldn't find an accountant who knew how to do service charge accounts. Yeah, so wherever I turned, it was difficult to find the expertise. And I have all of that now, but that took a very long time. So I think that's a big challenge that remains definitely in Northern Ireland. I mean, thanks to the efforts of you and people like Cassandra Zanelli, TPI, that there's definitely really great resources in definitely in England now. Northern Ireland's a different kettle of fish because we have different property laws, so we can't belong to TPI or do IRPM qualifications or anything because we've different property law.
I didn't realise that. I knew it was different in Scotland, but I didn't realise you had different laws in Northern Ireland. That's frustrating for you.
Yeah, well, it's in a way it's good because a lot of the laws that have been enacted in England haven't come here yet. So it's simpler in 20s or anything like that I hear you guys talking about. But yeah, so that was a massive challenge for me, and I think it's still a big challenge for everybody really. And now there's all this talk about, fire safety and increased regulation there. yeah, I think it's very difficult.
Yeah, definitely. Well, maybe TPI can help you out somewhere along the
I
line if
have
they can have a
asked
little
multiple
arm.
times. I've asked multiple times. Practically every year I beg them, please, can we have a Northern Ireland branch?
Oh gosh. Okay. Well, we'll have to see what we can do.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah. So how do you think technology then is changing the way that we can manage properties?
Well, I can really only speak for myself now. My little block management business, I love it and it's mine, and but it's tiny. So I can only do what I do with the help of technology. Now, my background was administration as an expert at all the Microsoft products, even Access. So I thought, well, this would be fine. I didn't even worry about the technology. So after about the first 2 years, I think I ditched Microsoft altogether. Too glitchy. It just wasn't up to what I needed it to do. And I started looking for off-the-shelf software that would allow me to build exactly what I needed without knowing coding. So I found that, and I've spent a lot of time basically developing my own system. So first of all, working out my processes, which that took a long time, and then creating the software that will drive that, so that I'm not having to remember millions of things to keep track of, but one step happens and then there's like a domino effect so that things get done. So and in between times I did try different softwares designed for either property management or block management specifically. I invested a lot of time in them, but they were just too inflexible. It didn't fit with the way I do things. You know, the big softwares, well, they were just completely out of my price range as a very small business.
Yeah, yeah, some of them are really astronomical and only viable for the nationwide companies, really. But yeah, it's certainly a tricky one to try and navigate the whole technology. But it sounds like you're doing amazingly anyway. But can you think of any common mistakes that you see people make when entering the property market? Maybe like first-time buyers who might not know what leasehold is or understand, like you did really, understand, what service charges are, what a limited company is, all that kind of thing. Are there any mistakes that you see happening again and again?
Do you know what? I couldn't blame the purchasers because they don't know what they
Mm.
don't know. So if their solicitor hasn't gone through their lease or gone through their transfer deed, and and if they haven't taken all the information I've provided to the vendor's solicitor about that management, if the purchaser's solicitor doesn't pass that on or explain anything, so how are they to know?
I know.
Uh, so I loved Nigel Glenn's suggestion the other day, which is one I've had myself, that at the point where the property is being listed, the estate agent should gather that information, just the basic information about the service charge and particular restrictions like on pets and things. Because as you know, every lease is different, so you can't just assume they're all going to have the same kind of clauses in them.
Yeah.
So I don't I really I feel I feel so sorry for especially the young couples, and maybe they've got kids, they're taking on a big mortgage, and there's so much for them to think of. And then I mean, and a lot of times I actually don't get very good information when they move into the property. And that's something I'm sort of just, a bit proactive with now to make sure I know I know when they've
Mm.
actually moved in, because I find it's really important to write to them as soon as possible. Now it used to be I would bombard them with like 4 or 5 pages explaining all about the lease and the service charge and everything. But now I realize they do not take it in at that point. It's probably just goes straight in the bin. So I just give them a little bit of information, tell them how to get in touch, give them a few sort of incentives to contact me, because the sooner I can just get a chat with them early on, the better. And the first thing I always ask them is, did your solicitor explain to you about the service charge? And they normally say no, which is either that it wasn't explained or it was and they just didn't take it in. So I'm not properly answering the question. I just don't know what they can do. It's really down to the solicitor, I think, to
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts at the beginning, doesn't it? When people are looking, trying to get that education out there, but utilizing agents, because as you say, the estate agent can just pick up the phone and say, because I looked on Rightmove the other day and there was like looking for flats, and it basically said on there, oh, the lease, how long the lease was, and if you got the service charge, you were lucky. But there's so much more that could be put on there that these people need to know. But because by the time it gets to us, it's kind of done and dusted. So I think maybe we
Yeah,
should work together on getting the education out there or something like that for
absolutely. Yeah,
people.
absolutely. I have kind of developed a little sort of strategy to get people to engage, and it is starting to work now. And
Mm,
I suppose the only thing I would say that is a common mistake is they don't pay.
mm,
That, and I even had somebody the other day saying, "Oh, well, I've not paid because I'm not happy with this problem." I was like, "Well, how am I going to sort that unless, there's money to do
yeah.
it?"
Yeah. Yeah, it's a bit of a vicious circle, really, isn't it? And that money doesn't actually come to us as agents; it goes to maintaining your property. So,
Yeah.
yeah, bit of a tricky one. But do you see any trends in the industry that you're excited about, or anything you can share in that respect?
Well, bear in mind, I'm at the very far edge of the industry in a very small little corner called Ballymena in Northern Ireland. But I am excited is probably the wrong word, but I am very pleased to see such a national conversation about fire safety. It frustrates me massively that what a struggle it is to just keep the proper standard of fire safety in communal hallways, and the lack of understanding and the lack of support in providing the correct standard. I mean, I don't know if this is a problem where you are, but in Northern Ireland, there's a lack of agreement between building control, the Northern Ireland Fire and Rescue Service, and your average independent fire safety consultant. They will not all say the same thing about the correct standard for fire safety in a communal hallway. So yeah, so the health and safety consultant who I worked with as a director initially, he helped me massively with this. We both had conversations with the Northern Ireland Fire Safety, sorry, the Northern Ireland Fire and Rescue Service, and we recorded them. I mean, we kept records of them, and
Mm.
that way built up the correct standard.
Yeah, I mean, you need people. I think it was a bit like I'm going to get onto the pandemic in a second, actually, but it was a little bit like the start of the pandemic when nobody could seem to agree of what we could and couldn't do, and there was different areas that could do different things, and you just need agreement. I mean, how's anybody supposed to do anything if you don't know what you're allowed to do? So, but well done for getting through it. But talking about the pandemic, do you think that's reshaped our industry or the way that we work at all? I'm not sure how different lockdowns were for you guys in Northern Ireland, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we don't really, sadly, the managing agents in Northern Ireland don't talk to each other a lot. I mean, I've done my best to do that. I would love to increase that, but it's not something there's not much networking at the moment. So I
Mm.
don't know a huge amount about how it affected the other managing agents, but I think generally everybody is a lot more open to doing things over Zoom. And I
Hmm.
think there's a lot of benefits to having your resident meetings via Zoom. You're not like this is something that Nigel mentioned as well, wasn't it? Not driving around
Yeah.
everywhere. But also, everybody's not vacated the development on the same night. So
Yes.
I
Yeah,
think
that helps.
and I always say to clients, look, I know you've got kids to put to bed and dinner and different things going on. So, I'm not one bit offended if you're connected, but you're having to do other things as well. And that way, there's more opportunity for people to get a little bit involved.
And some ways easier if somebody can't attend, you can record the meeting on
Mhm.
Zoom or Teams or whatever, and then you can share it with them the later if they want to be able to sit and watch it. I'm sure people don't, but
Yeah.
the option is there rather than in person. So I ask most of my guests this question, and that's common misconceptions of the industry. Yours might be completely different because of the different laws and everything, but can you share some things that you think are a common misconception of what we do?
Yeah, just people think, oh, I'm paying this amount every year. and then they look out the window and they have a look at the grass and whatever shrubs they are, and I think, goodness, well, that's a bit of a waste of money. That seems a lot for that little bit of grass getting cut. Because of course most people are unaware that keeping the legal entity healthy will affect their future property value. So I've actually worked with a couple of developments whose management companies were needed rehabilitated. So one didn't have one, and that had to be set up, and another one had got struck off. In fact, there was three, because there was another one that was about to get struck off. The one that actually got struck off before I could, I was of course contacted too late. But the one that actually was struck off, it cost the owners, there was 13 of them, it cost them over £9,000 in company's house fees to get that restored.
Wow.
And a lot of that was down to them just not believing me, believing what I told them.
Gosh.
So that's what we're really paying for. It's not to just keep the grass cut. That's something I often end up, explaining to people whenever they get in touch.
That sounds like quite a challenge in that respect. So can you talk about maybe a challenging project you've worked on and how you overcame the obstacles of that?
Oh my goodness, there's been so many. Yeah, because basically the first few clients I got, they came to me because they had massive challenges of one sort or another. Yeah, I mean, the common scenario is that it's come to me because most people have stopped paying. So that is just a big slog of contacting people. And sadly, some of them, if they never ever engage and have done a land registry search to check that they are still the owner, sometimes they only get in touch after a small claims court notice goes to them. It frustrates me a lot that's what it takes them to contact me, because by that stage they've incurred a bit of a fee. So yeah, so I've got a few developments that have been turned around in that way, where I now have a good level of understanding, good level of engagement, and I think that's amazing. People, for development to go for years where the majority weren't paying, and then to get it so that 80-90% are all on board with it and understand what's going on.
That's great that if you can turn it around like that, because it inspires trust, I think, in you and what you're trying to achieve. So yeah, that's really great. But so if somebody came to you and said, I don't know, they haven't cut the grass in 2 weeks, so I'm just going to stop paying my service charge. What's your approach then to try and resolve that? I know you explained, it's not just about that. In terms of your actual clients, how do you approach, trying to resolve it for them?
Well, if the contractor hasn't gone when he's supposed to, I would apologise and get that sorted. I really, really appreciate it when clients report stuff to me. In the early days, I had the notion that I would go around and, check every corner of every development and pick up all the issues and get them resolved. But that is just not possible, not for a normal fee. And also what I found was issues that I would think needed sorted, nobody cared about. So nobody appreciated me sorting them. And they didn't know I was doing it. And they would still have the same argument, oh, what are we paying you for? So now, because I haven't raised my fees, I've kept them low because I keep my overheads super low. Now, what I say to people is, look, I've designed a form on the website for you to report issues. But please use that. That's your responsibility. It's up to you to let me know anything that you're not happy with. We're working together on this. Yeah, I mean, I don't really have those conversations too much now where people are saying, oh, the garden hasn't come, so I'm not paying. That conversation would already have happened at the start of the relationship, so if they're not happy about something, they know what to do. So then it's on me to make sure that when those reports come in, I do turn them around quickly.
It sounds like you've got great communication with them then. If you're not having those issues now, you've obviously put all of the processes in place right from the start of that relationship in order to empower them, I guess, to tell you about things. So those issues then ultimately, fingers crossed, don't arise. But you do get it with contractors sometimes. They say they're going to go and then they don't. And you've got to have trust in them as well as your clients have got to have trust in you. So
I think they all know that I'm working for them, and that's one of my key values, that I will have a conversation with a contractor if they're not performing. But what I say to them is, it's very difficult for me to have that conversation if there's no real evidence. So if I can point to my issues log and say, well, this, and this was reported on these dates, that puts me in a very strong position to get that sorted. So this approach wouldn't be all developments. I'm thinking like maybe some very upmarket fancy apartments in a big city. They would be paying a lot to get a much more hands-on comprehensive service. But my clients, my business was built in Ballymena, where people don't want to spend money unless they have to. So, so they're generally happy with the trade-off that they do their bit, and then I can keep the fees low, and yeah, we figure it out together.
Good idea. Good idea. Nice little niche for you there. But to change the subject slightly, and I hope you don't mind talking about this, and if it's a problem, please say. But have you ever experienced or observed bullying in our industry at all, whether that's from colleagues, managers, clients, and how did you handle it?
Yeah, so sadly, I have experienced two instances of bullying in my work life. One was when I was employed. Both times it happened, I actually didn't recognize it at the time. But I was employed in an office where I was the youngest, highest paid administrator, and I didn't understand, why there was I was having so many problems, because I was doing my job to a high level, but I just thought I was doing something wrong. And I eventually had a breakdown in work and I had to take some time off. It was nothing like what you went through, Jodie. I think it's incredible with your work stress that you've spoken about. I can't imagine. But yes, I had a minor breakdown in work. I just couldn't cope anymore. And much later, I realized it was bullying, because I wasn't actually doing anything wrong and I was being discriminated against. So then when I did the block management, I encountered it again. And again, I didn't recognize it again because it was fairly early on where I felt very unsure of myself, like we all do, because I think more particularly maybe in Northern Ireland, because you don't have any training or, I didn't have the experts I could go to or other managing agents to bounce ideas off. So I did feel very unsure of what I was doing. So when people accused me of being incompetent, I tended to believe them. And I remember taking on a new client and having the first meeting, and oh my goodness, it was awful. There was threats and everything. And that night, like, I didn't really sleep. I just thought I could sort of systematically work through it. After the meeting, I got this great big, huge, long email with like 20 points of what I wasn't doing right. So I took like an entire day and I responded to every single point. And shortly after that, another email came with new things. So it took me a long time. And then eventually one of the individuals, because there was a few of them, one of the individuals, some of my contractors were reporting back to me that they were getting shouted at on site when they're trying to do the job, and actually my religion was mentioned. And when it was whenever the individual was shouting at the contractors and complaining about me and making the most terrible allegations about me, but then mentioning my religion. So then I realized, okay, this isn't actually about my performance here. I would never satisfy these people. And I mean, there was so much more to it than just emails complaining about things. And it was a bombardment as well. It was just like continual. I mean, they complained about me to every public body that you have, including the Old People's Commissioner. They complained about that during COVID because I was holding meetings via Zoom and old people wouldn't be able to access them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I can't believe that firstly somebody would, say anything about your religion or any belief that you have. That's personal to you and is what you believe in. And ultimately it's just kind of crossing a line, isn't it? Just stop it. Don't do things like that. But, bullying is very prominent, I believe, in our industry, not necessarily always within the companies that you work for. I mean, of course, that's across the board. That's just not in our industry. I had it when I worked in an office. A lady who was old enough to be my mother at the time just took a dislike to me because I was I don't know, tall, blonde and thin. I don't know, not blonde anymore. I couldn't, I couldn't afford to keep up with the roots.
Oh
But
yeah,
yeah,
there.
yeah, I was like, I was 21 and, you know, she was in her 50s and she was just horrid to me. Everything, like you say, everything I did was wrong, even though it wasn't wrong. I remember I went for an interview. I applied for the next grade up, and she kept me doing filing the night before I was supposed to go to this assessment day, and I didn't get home until 7, so I didn't really have time to prep. Um, you know, so it had to be done that day, and I was 21. I didn't really know that you could say no at that
Yeah,
time. You know, it was
yeah.
20 years ago as well, and but yeah, it's horrible, but yeah, I think bullying from clients as well is becoming more and more prevalent in our industry. You know, of course they have a right to email us, and of course they have a right to know what's going on and to understand their lease and what's going on and to get that information. But the bombarding is quite hard, and I don't know whether that's a, you know, because we're now in this, everyone's working from home and in this kind of bubble of everything's done by email or text or reporting on a portal or something like that. But it's definitely getting worse. And I mean, the TPI Property Institute, so TPI, have an unreasonable behaviour policy that we've certainly implemented it in my business. So if you haven't got that, by all means, I can share it with you.
Thanks.
If you do ever need it in the future. What advice would you give to someone who was facing bullying in the workplace?
Yeah, I don't know about the workplace because you've got hierarchies to deal with, and that's a different thing. But in terms of clients, so I do feel I've learned a lot from what I went through. I now just set very firm boundaries. I feel like I think the key thing is to recognize it, and because I have had, like, generally when I take on a new development, there is always somebody who will get on the phone and complain and shout and be annoyed at me. I have no problem with them whatsoever. Because generally it's just a lack of understanding on their part. And the majority of times we end up best of friends. Not literally, but you know, that gets turned around because in their mind, because they have a legitimate issue, and it's just they're only angry at me because they don't understand things properly. So eventually when they understand, you know, it's fine. And when they realize that I'm absolutely on this, I want to do the best for them, then that's fine. So there's no problem with that. But I now recognize people that are trying to control the situation, trying to control me through underhand methods. And I take a very hard line with them. So sometimes what I've had to do when sometimes I will just keep talking. I will just talk and talk and talk about the lease clauses, about the annual estimate of cost, because, you know, yeah, it's kind of hard to explain, but that's one that's one tactic I use to just keep going. If they're being abusive, I mean, I just hang up. I'll just say, sorry, this conversation is, or I can't remember what I've said because you know what it's like in the moment.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't get you anywhere, does it? Shouting doesn't get you anywhere anyway. And I know what you mean though about, you know, just keep talking, just keep referring to, well, the lease says,
Yeah,
unfortunately, in the terms of your lease, it says this, and you can't go against the lease. So, you know,
yeah,
you can shout all you like, really, because we can't change it.
yeah.
We just need to work with it.
Yeah, I mean, happy, you know, I do have sympathy.
Mm,
I have sympathy with everybody, who hasn't had the thing explained to them properly. I really, really do. But where I recognize that somebody is trying to manipulate or coerce or bully me in any way, you know, I won't have that.
mm.
But there's so few of them. I mean, that's a very unusual mentality. I really don't think it's that common. And I think you just and when people are bombarding me with emails, I don't really tolerate that. I will just pick up the phone and speak to them, no
Okay.
matter how ridiculous I think they're going to be based on their emails. And lots of times, in fact, there's one guy, it wasn't emails, it was handwritten letters sent
Oh,
to the office, like scrawled, so scary looking. But once I actually called to called at the house when I was doing a site visit. He sadly wasn't in. But eventually, when I got his phone number, I phoned him up and I spoke with him for about 40 minutes. Just let him get it all off his chest. And by the end of the call, he was completely fine, you know. So yeah, I don't really have time for endless emails. I will just pick up the phone
Yeah.
and speak to them.
Yeah, good call. I mean, it's that balancing act, isn't it, from having a paper trail to just trying to get it sorted. And most of the time, as you say, 90% of the time, probably they come across worse in an email because they're frustrated. So when everything is going down, there's no tone to an email, is there? You're not really. So it's sometimes on the phone you get the social cues a bit more than you would
Yeah,
on an email. So
yeah.
but how important do you think it is then for companies in the property sector, I guess across the board, to create a supportive and inclusive work environment? Imagine if you were working for another company and somebody brought up about your religion, as part of a problem, if you like, which obviously it isn't.
Yeah.
How would you expect a company to deal with that?
I don't really know. I'm so long out of the corporate environment. I've worked so many different places. I was very I was very restless when I was young. So I've worked in a couple of banks. But within one of those banks I worked in all different departments because I was a relief secretary. And then I worked for local government, and again I worked in several departments, including HR. So you think I have a good answer after having worked in HR? Oh, I don't know, Jodie. I mean, companies can do their very best to set policies and, procedures and everything, but ultimately it's down to the will of the line managers. I don't know. I mean, can you not just throw the policies out the window and just say, do to others as you'd like them to do to you?
Yeah. Is it not just about respect at the end of the day, and about respecting other people and just being nice to other people, and understanding that not everyone has the same needs, and sometimes you have to make allowances for certain situations, and you can write policies until they're coming out of your ears, I suppose, but
Yeah, just be kind and really just try and understand other people, because when all different people, all different backgrounds, cultures, religions are all working together, you need to really listen to each other. You absolutely can't just put people in a box and say, oh, you're from that background, so therefore you're such and such. Everybody's an individual, so
yeah.
you need to spend time listening to people and how they feel about things, because chances are they'll have their own take on things that could be different to somebody else from their same background. So it's not a very cut and dry answer, but
No, it's a great answer, because ultimately, as you say, you're not, were you saying like every background, and not every person from every background or religion, etc., will think the same way. And that's the same, I suppose, with policies. You can have a policy for something, but then there are going to be, changes to that policy for an individual, that who might be absolutely incredible at their job, but for some reason they can't physically get to an office, but they are brilliant, so they're going to work from home full time, as an example. That doesn't mean they can't do their job. They just find it difficult because public transport won't be suitable for them to get to an office or something like that. So I think you always have to have flexibility in everything you do, and respect and kindness at the end of the day. But do you think you could share, before I let you go, do you think you could share any I can't speak, a success story from your career that you're particularly proud of?
Well, it's not a complete success yet, but one of my early clients, there was a terrible problem discovered in that the roofs had been built wrong, and they were continually leaking and actually rotting on the inside. And they were fairly newly built. I think at the time I came on, they were maybe only 4 or 5 years old, but they were not covered by an HBC. They were not, the developer wouldn't put it right. I had a consultant to investigate all possibilities, including because building control had signed off on the roofs that were not built according to the building standard at the time or according to the plans. And there's no recourse to building control either. So that was it. They were stuck with having to replace 2 roofs at their own cost. So thankfully, I mean, I can't put it down to any great foresight on my part, but for some reason, I'd taken the legal cover with their building insurance, and that's covering litigation against the developer, and that should hopefully be settled soon. It's
Oh,
at
fantastic.
an advanced stage now, so I feel so proud of that. Well, yeah, because if it hadn't have been, and I try to always take that legal cover now. If, I try, I explain it to the clients as well worth having, because you never know what might come up, because that
Yeah.
was the only thing that saved them having thousands of pounds to pay out.
Oh gosh, imagine. I mean, you've got the cladding crisis going on and people having to pay for something that a developer did and that sort of thing. So to have that on top, it's just crazy. But well done for sorting it all out. And fingers crossed it all comes through soon for you. So finally, tell me what your vision for the future of the property industry is, and where do you see yourself in it?
Right. Well, I think that managing agents are going to continue to get bigger. I do see the value and necessity in order to keep up with this massive burden of responsibility in all these diverse areas. I do see the sense in having a large company that can have separate specialists in all of the areas. So I think that's going to continue, and I can see how more products are being made available to serve that market. So that's a good thing. But I think it would be an awful pity if in the future homeowners only had the choice of these really large companies because they're expensive. I'd like it to be possible for your managing agent to be, a local person operating on a small scale like I am, but able to cover all of those areas and provide the service of a big company, but have the local knowledge and expertise and relationships with the homeowners. I think there's a lot of value in that approach, particularly when it comes to things like fire safety. You need to
Mm.
build that understanding and engagement, and you need the cooperation of the owners. I think there's managing agents who can provide a service that is sort of like a hotel concierge, where that everybody goes to them and to get everything done, and that they're paying for that. That's fine. But I think for the average homeowner who's maybe in a modest development, there needs to be a low cost option there. And actually, I find a lot of my developments, particularly ones that have a lot of retired people in them, they actually love being involved with each other in the management company. It's kind of a little bit of a social club.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I think I fit in well there. So that's where I see myself, and what I would like to do next, because I mean, I've got capacity to take on more clients, but I'm not actively seeking them. I'm very happy with the portfolio I've got. The way I'd like to grow now is to be able to offer the service to other small managing agents like myself, or maybe even estate agents or people doing other things who'd like to offer the block management as well. Offer them the customized software
Hmm.
solutions that I developed, and help them figure out their processes, and then create the software that will support that. Because I think that way one person can actually do a great deal.
Well, that's a great idea, I think. And, I think one thing about being a managing agent, I think you alluded to this earlier, is that you kind of have to know everything, but you're not paid to know everything. So I think it's a really good skill to have those connections of who you can go to and everything. And if you can be that person that offers that to the wider industry, if you like, I think that will really set you apart, from everybody else. And it's been an incredible chat, Sarah. Thank you so much for being with me today. How can people find you if they want to do so?
Well, my email address is Sarah with an H at bbmpro.uk. So that's Sarah at bbmpro.uk. And I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm very lazy with LinkedIn. Actually, Jodie, you've helped me a lot to engage more
Fine.
interested in what you're saying. So yeah, I'd love to connect more on LinkedIn as well. So you'll find me there.
Fantastic. Well, I'll pop your email address and your LinkedIn profile in the show notes if people want to find you. Is there anything you'd like to add before we finish off?
Well, no, just thanks to you, Jodie. What you're doing is incredible. It's bringing massive value, I think, obviously with your work, but with the podcast particularly, because you're just reminding us all of the human side of what we do. And especially if you're working alone like I am, you feel like you're part of a community. So yeah, please keep it up. And the guests you've been having on and what, the insights have been given has been so valuable. So yeah.
Well, thank you. I'm glad I'm making a small difference if with what I'm doing. I think it was really important to me that was the goal, that I just wanted to give a softer side to the industry, as well as the important facts and the important information, and speak to, I mean, I have had male guests obviously, but speak to predominantly women who are working in our industry, and just get that collaborative approach going on and that sort of thing. So yeah, thank you so much for your time. Obviously, if you ever need anything from me, please do shout. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Jodie.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to my latest podcast. You can find me on LinkedIn and Instagram. The links are in the show notes. Or you can contact me on jodie@jodiefraser.com. For more content and updates, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on your favourite platforms. Thank you once again for listening. Until next time, take care.